All right, Peter, so I appreciate you being here. I want to dive right into this video because this is something that was not seen ahead of time by the public. And now that the verdict is in and Mark has been acquitted, it's very interesting going through this video. And so I want to take a look at this with you right here. And can you help us walk through what we're seeing?
Pause it right there. Okay, so hang on. So you got to pull it back a little bit. So what you want to see is where Mark Jr. is. So his little foot, then 12-year-old Mark Jr. So if you watch right here, there he is. He's right by the wall. So this is the wall. This is something called Locust Street in the heart of Philadelphia. The Planned Parenthood gates are down at the bottom of your screen, about 50 feet away. Mark Jr. they are away from the gates. Mark Jr.'s back is against the wall. He's drinking a bottle of water, bothering no one. As you can see, his dad, that's Mark Houck, our defendant. He's just looking for folks and praying. And actually, at this point, it's been about 30 minutes since he's seen anybody. So no patients out there. It was a slow day at the clinic. And most of the patients would be coming to the front gates anyway. They get dropped off right in front if you're taking Uber or Lyft. So this is, Mark is really more there with his son, away from the gates, and just to pray and do a little bit of sidewalk counseling, but mostly to pray and be with his son. And now you can watch Mr. Love. So this is Bruce Love. This is an aggressive abortion escort. Now look where he stands. A sidewalk square away from another man's son, 12-year-old son, really within, when you looked at him in court, you put their shoulders up against each other. I mean, you're talking about a foot difference. You've got a 72-year-old man that has used profanity in front of your son. He's made crude sexual references in front of your son and to you as Mark Sr. So you're going to react just as a father pretty negatively to seeing that just right in front of you.
Yeah, and before we go further in the video here, Peter, we can't obviously hear it on this clip, but it's interesting to know. I mean, Mark alleges that he was using profanity and being very crude in front of, so it wasn't like he was just standing there and just trying to intimidate or something. Like he was being pretty vulgar.
Well, they've got history, so that's the thing. Love's been out there at that clinic for 30 years. Mark had been out there on and off for 20. But in past incidents, with Mark Jr. present, Love had used foul language, to the nth degree, Love has a history with all of the sidewalk counselors of just, F word all like crazy and really crude things that you just can't even allude to on a family program. So they have history. And then this man walks and stands up next to your 12-year-old son who's doing nothing wrong. And so then that's what proceeds here. Mark had told him, Mark tells him, get away from my son, go back. Now, Mark Jr. gets out of the way, and Mark Jr.'s out of the screen. Love can still see Mark Sr., but Love comes off the wall to talk to Mark Jr. And at that point, Mark Houck, our defendant, he gets hot. And so now if you notice something there, scrub it back a little bit. Mark Sr. actually tells him, go back to your place, stay away from my son. Now watch, slow motion this part. So Love is actually walking back, stop right there. Mark Sr. turned away, went back to his post until Love wheels around and he starts jawing with them again. So Love on 3 different occasions incites a further altercation, provokes it. First by walking up and standing next to a man's son. He certainly has no right to do so, and certainly that is not a wanted presence on that front. Then he comes off the wall and goes around the corner to speak directly to Mark Jr., which gets Mark Sr. hot again, and understandably. I mean, my goodness. But even then, if Love hadn't wheeled back around and started to come back into it, you still get no push. So the jury got to see that, got to hear from the witnesses what was actually said by the individuals. And they got other evidence too. Turns out Mr. Love and the security director of Planned Parenthood selected this video clip and only this video clip to give to the FBI, and Planned Parenthood deleted all the rest of the video from all of their other cameras, so you didn't get to see a better view. The FBI nor Planned Parenthood, they didn't collect any video from the 6 different other cameras on other buildings and the police camera at the corner. They didn't do anything to preserve the evidence of this. And in any other federal prosecution where the FBI is called in, they're preserving everything. I mean, they're doing their jobs well. Here, it's literally a minute and a half of videotape from Bruce Love, hand selected by the Planned Parenthood security director.
Yeah.
And so all of that came out at trial.
It's really remarkable. And if I remember right, I think it was the DOJ's statement at the time was, because remember, the push is essentially when it happens over here, whatever you want to call that, a simple assault, anything that it could possibly be in the legal system, it certainly is not in the classification of a FACE Act violation. And he was facing 11 years in prison over this, also had his home raided by the FBI in a very heavy-handed, heavily armed SWAT-like raid, all over this when they had the video evidence all along. Peter, it really makes me wonder how this thing went along. And I'm wondering, are you guys going to pursue, is Mark going to pursue any answers in this case? Because when the government can wield the FBI and the DOJ like this in a case, which I believe it was you that told me, Peter, that the federal government, they do not take these cases unless they win. They know they're going to win. They have a very high success rate. This one clearly was a very weak case and had a low % chance of winning. How did this get through? Was it a rogue prosecutor somewhere, or did it come from higher up? My question to you is, are you guys going to pursue answers on this?
Well, and this is the place where, when you're in the criminal system, your win is to get an acquittal. And so that is really the end of the criminal process. But Congress has already set up a subcommittee. It's the U.S. House, the Republicans in the House who are pro-life have set up a subcommittee on the abuse of the FACE Act. And so that is really where the American people can get justice from the Justice Department, get answers from the Attorney General. And we saw even at the time of the raid, congressmen and senators were going, what is going on here? And we had, those offices reached out to us and they said very quietly, they said, does Mark have a criminal record or why would they just don't do this? The government doesn't send 25 agents out to people. And we looked and, look, Mark has no criminal record to speak of, and certainly none that would justify this, where we in May of 2022, our attorneys had said to the U.S. government, we sent a letter to them. You've got no case. We told them that flat out. But then we also said, if you decide to charge anyway, we will present him. Just send us the summons. That's how it's done in the federal system. So there is not a single federal officer who needed to be pulled off of other duties, looking at actual crimes and actual criminals to arrest Mark, much less send 25 to terrorize his family and to, and long guns, ballistic shields, battering rams. As part of the discovery in this case, I mean, we got, some items there that talk more about this. I hope the Congress is able to look at that. I hope they highlight the excessive lengths that they went to come after Mark. The reason it's so important too is that other sidewalk counselors are watching this and they might be dissuaded from doing their life-saving work. I mean, they are the last line of defense. When someone is walking into an abortion clinic and they may need help, they may need a caring ear, they just need resources, that sidewalk counselor is the difference between them getting those resources and having an abortion. And so we really, it's extremely important for the pro-life movement. Those folks are able to work and do their job without having, what happened here. I mean, look at it this way. Had we lost, it would essentially been open season on sidewalk counselors by these aggressive abortion escorts. They'd be trying to bait our folks, bait them aggressively, go after them, provoke them, all trying to draw a contact, because knowing then that the feds would jump down, charge our folks with, 10-year felonies and all of that. So I mean, this was a must-win case for the pro-life movement, and we didn't just win it. I mean, we won it when the jury finally, we had to sub out a juror. When the final jury got together, they decided it in an hour.
Wow. Not
guilty, all counts.
Wow. So there's really not much of a debate going on there. And I know you talked earlier about how the federal government here didn't preserve a lot of the video evidence. They only kept that one kind of odd angle, even though they had multiple angles of this at their disposal. Did they have this video evidence well in advance of these charges as they were kind of gathering evidence? Because it sure seems like if somebody saw this ahead of time, that a reasonable prosecutor would say, we don't have a case here.
They had it 2 days after the incident. So
Wow.
that was when Planned Parenthood went to the FBI. And of course, Mr. Love had filed a private criminal complaint for simple assault in the Philadelphia Municipal Court. And the court threw the case out because Love refused to show up for trial. It was set for trial twice, and he didn't show up. So they threw out the case. So that's really where this matter should have ended. But somewhere in D.C., because also we've gotten the grand jury. The grand jury was very active in about March of 2022, and then it really went dark as far as we can tell. And then in September, kicked back up. So somewhere somebody said, we want to make an example out of Mark Houck. And look, the Biden administration sent their top trial attorney from D.C. He's the guy that wrote the book on prosecuting face cases. And this was their test case. They wanted to go in here, make an example of Mark, frighten all of the other sidewalk counselors across the country, and try to shut down what we pro-life folks are doing in front of the nation's abortion facilities.
Yeah. And conveniently right ahead of an election where abortion was one of the top issues in that election. So you factor in all of those things, and it certainly leaves an impression of what might have been going on with some of this decision making. One more question for you here, Peter. Mark had to suffer through a very dangerous raid, as you mentioned earlier here in this interview. Can we expect a potential lawsuit here, or is there any action that's going to be taken against the government for the trauma and the suffering that this family unnecessarily went through? And the only reason I would suggest the lawsuit possible is because of, as you mentioned, you guys alerted them and said, we will come in so you don't have to raid the house, and they still did it anyway.
The problem is the government has a pretty strong immunity in these cases. And so it would be tough for a lawsuit. And really, to me, I mean, the biggest victory, I mean, Mark is the head of a Christian men's ministry. So his victory is, we'll run him around the country talking to groups to inspire them with his story, his personal faith journey, and what he and his family had to go through here. I mean, they are wonderful, lovely people. I got to meet all of the kiddos. They were all there for the trial, for the whole trial, packed into 2 hotel rooms. So you've got Mark, Ryan, Marie, 7 kiddos between 2 hotel rooms. And I mean, just this beautiful, wonderful family. I mean, the real win here is we get Mark around the country talking about his faith journey. We put light the fire under the DOJ, make sure that in the Congress, they are not allowed to get away from this so that they never try this again. I mean, that's the real victory long-term for all of us.
Absolutely. All right. Well, hey, Peter, I appreciate you stopping by here, all the work you did on this case, and also stopping by to help break down this video and what happened here in this case. So appreciate your time.
Thank you, Dan.